What's going on, everybody? America Football Network here with another video today. And today we are bringing you guys a video on the struggles of Florida State and just how bad they've been, how bad they've fallen off. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe, comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Let me reach that goal of 3,000 subscribers by the end of September. Check out the description for links to our shop, podcast, website, patron page, and our college football roundup channel. And today we are joined by Michael. How you doing today, man?
Good. How about you?
Doing good. Go ahead and let everybody know real quick before we get started where they can find you at.
You can find me at Ohio State Hype Videos on YouTube, and you can find me at the College Football Podcast as well.
Yep, so make sure you guys go on YouTube, the College Football Podcast, subscribe to them, and Ohio State Videos, subscribe to them over there as well. But let's go ahead and jump in. So Florida State, what's been your thoughts on this team so far? I mean, struggled offensively all season. They're 1-3, lost to Georgia Tech 24-21, lost to Boston College at home 28-13, lost to Memphis 28-12, who allowed 50 points to Navy the following week, and then finally got a win against Cal this past weekend 14-9. So what's your thoughts been on this Florida State team so far, and what are you expecting out of them for the rest of the season?
I will say my thoughts on the team so far. I mean, obviously disappointing start to the season, pretty much disappointing season overall, the way it's been going so far, especially with how they did last year. I mean, I was expecting a little bit of a fall off, obviously, with losing Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, among others, Jared Verse, but not this much of a fall off. I thought DJ would be better than he would be, obviously. But I would argue that he's worse than when he was at Clemson. Had a nice, not necessarily nice one against Cal, but good win. As you were pointing out, Memphis gave up 50 points to Navy. That's not a good look for Florida State. Boston College struggled with Michigan State. And obviously Georgia Tech has proven to actually be a pretty good team this year. So to this point, I would say underwhelming.
I agree with you. I mean, I expected Florida State to have a drop-off as well. I mean, you kind of have to expect it when they lose the guys that they lost. Just a bunch of guys that they lost. Keon Coleman, Jordan Travis, Johnny Wilson, and then on the defense, Fisk up front on the D-line along with Verse and a lot of the other guys that they lost. And to me, the main thing I'm learning from Florida State is they wanted to as a Clemson fan, they wanted to make this claim last year that the game between Dabo and Clemson and Norvell and Florida State was like transfer portal versus high school recruiting. Florida State won, and everybody's telling them to see the transfer portal is the way to go. But honestly, this is the downside of only using the transfer portal. You have no recruits that you've been able to build up. It's all been guys through the transfer portal. And now look at where they're at. Yeah, you're going to have years like last year where you're really great and just without injury, they're in the playoff. And who knows what they do there? They might make the national championship game the way that team was playing. That team had weapons all over the field. But then when you're not going to consistently get guys out of the portal like they had last year. I mean, they haven't been able to do anything offensively. DJ completing 57% of his passes, 2 touchdowns with 3 picks. He can't hit a wide open receiver. He's really playing a lot like that first year in 2021 where he played with Clemson, completed about a similar percentage of passes, 9 touchdowns, 10 picks. Now the following year, actually had a solid year. Clemson won the ACC. And without Antonio Williams fumbling on the punt return against South Carolina, they're in the college football playoff, as crazy as it is to say. That Clemson team would have been in the college football playoff and with DJ at quarterback. So, I mean, you look at this team and they're averaging 2.3 yards a carry. Defensively, they haven't been terrible. Now, they haven't been great, but I mean, they haven't been good, but they're not being terrible. I mean, you look at they gave up 24 to Georgia Tech, 28 to Boston College, 20 to Memphis, 9 to Cal. Like they're not allowing a whole lot of points a game. Like this is a team who could give if they had a competent offense, could be doing something. The problem is they're just not. Offensively, they just flat out suck. They're averaging 15.5 points a game. They've only scored 6 touchdowns all season. Converting third downs at 31% of the time. You look rushing wise, only running for 65.8 yards a game. It's like this team is just, they're not getting it done. A -3 turnover ratio. They've thrown 3 picks, lost 2 fumbles. I've only forced and created 2 turnovers on the year. So, I mean, it just hasn't been good for Florida State. And it's not going to get any easier as they're getting into the tough part of their schedule now as ACC play starts. There's not a whole lot of wins left on the schedule for this team.
Yes, I will say, as you mentioned, there's not a whole lot of wins left on the schedule. I agree with you on that point. I would also like to add on quickly here before we move on to that part about the offense here. And you're talking about DJ. He had that one solid year, and I would argue he also had a pretty good, decent year at Oregon State last year as well, as they went 10-2 or 9-3, 10-2 or 10-3 last year. DJ, the best game DJ has played this year was when they lost to Georgia Tech 21-24. He was 19-27, 193 yards. Like that's just not going to cut it if that's your best game.
No. And it's really, as a Clemson fan, it is so hard for me to figure out what happened to this guy. Because in 2020, Trevor Lawrence missed 2 games because he had COVID. We played Boston College at home, then went on the road to Notre Dame. That game at Notre Dame, we lost that game because the defense couldn't stop him. DJ played out of his mind, put up the most passing yards from an opposing quarterback in that stadium in the history of it, played absolutely perfect in that game for the most part. And against Boston College, had a great game as well. Clemson was kind of struggling a little bit. And 4th and 1, DJ read option, huge touchdown run, really sparked us, got the win there. He played great in those 2 games, and then it's like, boom, all of a sudden he can't find that again. He has not had a better game in his career than he had against Notre Dame. And it's jumping into the schedule. I mean, they go on the road to SMU this week. SMU's offense has been lighting it up. I don't know if the way the defense is played, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop them. And the way the offense is playing, I don't think they can keep up with them. Then they get Clemson at home. The way Clemson's looking right now, I mean, Cade Klubnik the last 2 weeks has been the best quarterback in the country. Clemson's offense has been just lighting it up on the scoreboard. 35-0 in the first quarter against App State, 28-0 first quarter against NC State. I think Clemson can go down there and blow them out. Then they got to go on the road to Duke, a team who's honestly struggling the same way Florida State is. They can't get an offense going. The defense is fighting for their lives, but they can't get an offense going. And as a Clemson fan too, it doesn't matter what kind of defense you have if the offense can't do anything. We've seen that since 2021. 2021, not really so much in 22, but 23 last year, and then at the Georgia game this year, the defense can only do so much if the offense can't sustain drives. That's something Florida State is going to have to do. That Duke game could be another loss. They're going to get crushed by Miami. They got to go on the road there. North Carolina, that'll be an interesting one. Neither one of those teams can really seem to find an offense. At Notre Dame, probably going to get smoked in that one. Charleston Southern, you'll win that one. Florida, probably, I don't even know what's going to happen with the Florida game. But as I look at this schedule, I only see 3 or 4 wins left on the schedule. Florida State might not make a bowl game.
I'll agree with you on that statement there. I don't have Florida State making a bowl game either. If you look at it, going on the road to SMU, their offense has been in gear since they benched Stone. I don't see them letting off the gas anytime soon. I have that as a loss. As you said, the way Clemson is playing right now, wouldn't be surprised if they go into Tallahassee and smoke them either. Duke, that's more of a toss-up game. I could see a win there. Miami, not a chance. North Carolina, toss-up game. Notre Dame probably going to get smoked. Charleston Southern, that's really the only game on this Florida State schedule that really no conversation is needed, shockingly, compared to how they played last year. And then they play Florida. So if you really look at this schedule, the rest of the season, if you really look at it, there's pretty much only 3 winnable games. If you really look at it, obviously all games are winnable. But the way Florida State's playing right now, the only 3 winnable games for Florida State left on their schedule would be Duke, North Carolina, Charleston Southern, and maybe Florida.
Yeah, see, to me, the Florida game is 50-50. Both teams suck, and it's a rivalry game. Who knows what's going to happen? And you also get them at home, which helps. But as I look, really, I have Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame is almost sure loss. Of course, you still have a chance because the game has to be played, but you're probably going to lose those games. SMU, I would say 65-35 in favor of SMU. I think Duke, North Carolina, and Florida are more toss-up games. So at best case scenario for Florida State, I still only see 5 wins on the schedule, which finishes you at 6-6. So it is not looking good for the Seminoles. I know Alabama. Remember, Norvell and DeBoer were the final 2 candidates for Alabama. I know Alabama's looking like, thank God we didn't hire that guy. He doesn't recruit high school. He tries to build through the transfer portal. It isn't working. He needs a quarterback, and which is, again, don't get me wrong. I think Norvell is still a very good coach. I think that he could still turn this around. Not this year, obviously, but in the coming years. We saw what he did at Memphis. Had a powerhouse at Memphis before he came to Florida State. I think he's still a good coach, a good offensive mind, and I think that he can turn this around. But not this year. They may miss a bowl game this year, and honestly, if they miss a bowl game, it might be wraps for Norvell if they have a bad season next year as well. So any closing thoughts for you on Florida State before we head out of here?
Just a couple here. Obviously, there is a possibility, as you said, if they don't make a bowl game, it could be wraps for Norvell. In my opinion, I don't really see that due to them technically making the playoffs last year, an injury away from making the playoffs last year. So from my eyes, my perspective, I think they might give Norvell 1 more year at least if they do not make a bowl game this year. And I will agree with you. That is the problem with Norvell. He recruits in a transfer portal. If you really look at it, the one good year Florida State had under the Norvell era was the year that he brought Keon Coleman in, and he just turned out to be a stud of a transfer. And that was really, and Jared Verse, obviously. And those 2 players, if you really want to be honest, besides Jordan Travis, who was, I believe, already there by the time he got there, those 2 transfers he brought in my opinion, are pretty much the only reason that Florida State was really good last year outside Jordan Travis.
I agree with you. The transfers built that team, and we see what happened now when they're all gone and you didn't bring in the same level transfers. There's not a single receiver on this roster that scares anybody, whereas last year, as a Clemson fan playing Florida State, Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson legitimately scared me. Like, do not let those guys get the football in their hands. And, they just don't have playmakers on either side of the ball like they did last year. It's not looking good for Florida State. Things continue to not look good for them. But that's going to wrap up today's video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Check out Michael if you on YouTube if you don't mind. Go over. He's got the College Football Podcast Show, and then also Ohio State Hype videos. So go check them out. Subscribe here to American Football Network as well. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.